Hi, everybody. My name is Dawn Drozd, and I am the owner of Clear Vision Business Coaching. Today, I have the privilege of having a conversation with my friend Kirk Armstrong, who owns Armstrong Sales Coaching. Kirk has been involved in sales for over 30 years, including owning his coaching firm for the past 15 years. So first, welcome, Kirk. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Dawn. You too.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me join you today.
my pleasure. Well, to get started, I guess I'm curious how the heck you got into the sales coaching business. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's a short story. When I got out of college, I thought I was going to rip it up. I knew I was going to get into sales. I came from a sales family, right? Dad, mother, sister, brother, everybody was doing sales. So I said, well, that's what I want to do too, I suppose. So I went out there and boy, I don't think you could work harder than me. I tried everything I could to get there quickly, and I suffered and I wasn't as successful as I thought, not because of the effort, but just because sales was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought just showing up and talking about your products and services was the way to go. And boy, did I fail at that endeavor. So did okay, but I knew there was more. I knew I was better than that. So what actually happened is I ran into someone like myself by coincidence. And this person happened to be walking into our office to cold call our company. And they had no interest, but I overheard the conversation and I kind of chased them out into the parking lot and said, I want to sign up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's how it started. And it made such a monumental difference to me, Dawn. I remember I kept rolling my eyes at myself, hearing what he had to say and going, why didn't I think of that? Oh my gosh, that seems so much better and easier. And quite frankly, I had a great success with that. It made a humongous difference to me personally. And so therefore, I got elevated into management eventually, and eventually director of sales and VP of sales of companies. But what I did all the way along, once I learned that valuable lesson for myself, I kept hiring companies for our organizations as I went,
Mm-hmm.
and it made a big difference. So at some point, I got pretty darn good at this training business because I was hiring all these people, and that's how I got into it. I decided, at some point, I'm going to do that. I think I'm pretty good at that stuff. So that's how I got my start.
Oh, that's awesome. And it just goes to show the value of that training, that you're right. Sales isn't just show up and say whatever you feel like saying. It's a skill like other skills. And you have to learn that skill. So expecting somebody just to immediately know how to do it is a little tricky. So that's great. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. You think you can and that's most people, let's face it. It's not like everybody finds someone like me. They go out and they just wing it and they hope that they have good returns. And sometimes they do, but sometimes they're working way too hard to get there.
I agree. Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, so my next question is really, what advice would you give to the small business owner who they have salespeople, and maybe they're not really thrilled with where they are today? They really want to see those salespeople grow. What advice would you give to the small business owner in that case?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, right? So, you see somebody that has some potential, and how do you get them to the next level?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the sad reality is not everybody can grow. It is what it is. There are some people that what we call they're coachable and trainable, and that's a good thing. And when I interview companies, I'm always trying to figure that out first. You're like, are these people that want, do they want to be here? Do they see that there's areas of improvement, or are they just saying, are they coming in kicking and screaming?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's never going to work. Right. So I think the first thing is, you got to make sure you have the right people on the team. As a small business owner, you have to make sure, are your people admitting faults? Do they want to get better? It is really hard to get someone to grow when they don't want to grow or they don't see the weaknesses in themselves. Mm-hmm. So I would say, in terms of helping people immediately, obviously it could be signing them up for programs like myself, but it might not be me, right? There might be even a better, more appropriate program for that person. But, I think you always got to find help. Always got to find help. Even I have a coach, I hire a coach. I work with this person frequently because I don't know everything. And that, you need more brains.
Yeah.
And that's your profession. You understand that well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. You can't fix people who aren't, or work with people who aren't willing and open to new ideas and to learning. But those skills, like you said, they have to recognize, the owner, small business owner has to recognize that, again, this really is a skill set people have to know. And so if you don't have the time as a salesperson, if you've done a great job, I'm sorry, as the owner, if you've done a great job of running your company, but you don't have the time, or nor have you necessarily learned those skills, I think that's important to then bring in somebody who can help. So that makes really great sense. Of those people maybe that are on your team who need more motivation, how do you motivate somebody in sales to improve and do better?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. It's one of the questions we probably hear, maybe in the top 5, right? So how do you motivate salespeople? Well, the answer nobody wants to hear, but it's similar to the answer I gave before, is that the real answer is you can't. So we'll start with that, right? It's really hard to motivate people. When you're in sales, you really need to have what we call that fire in the belly. You have to want to succeed. You have to want to grow. Let's face it, sales is money. All right. It's not about greed, but it is about money, and you hire someone to make the company money. So that person has to want that money. They have to want to grow. And if they're not built that way, it's going to be hard. I mean, I will tell you, one of the biggest problems small business owners have today, especially right now with what's going on in the world, is they're hanging on to salespeople too long.
Right.
And they, especially during this period, some people think, well, I can't find anyone right now, so I'm just going to keep the person that's not doing that well. It's just not true. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that would be willing to jump into another company. I know many of them right now, but owners don't look at it that way. So the tough part is it's very difficult to motivate people. Yeah. However, you can do things to help them get there if they are motivated, but they don't know the direction. You can, let's look at KPIs or key performance indicators and try to show them the data in their craft. Like, hey, are you aware that when you go and make cold calls, your close rate is 1% to 3%? But yet when you go out and meet people at events, of course, not doing that much right now, but your close rate goes up to maybe 10 to 15%. So, let's look at doing more of that maybe instead of cold calling. So helping them with the data and these KPIs can be tremendous of someone that doesn't understand how to do that. And quite frankly, I like to say, and again, it's not meant to be self-serving, but when people go to training of any kind, and if they can learn one thing that makes their job easier, faster, better, it's motivating.
Right.
So don't you find that true with clients of your own?
Mm-hmm.
They get motivated because they see something that's working better. It gets them excited, so they're motivated. So that's the other part of the equation.
Yeah. Motivation, definitely. I think a lot of people think that those external things that they do will motivate people, but there's been so much psychological research that shows that the intrinsic reason. So I want to do it because maybe I'm learning stuff. Maybe there's a real reason internally that makes me want to be successful versus you're just going to throw extra bonuses on top of things. Not that those can't motivate the right person, but in most cases, that isn't what motivates folks. It's really, like you said, it's showing that you care about them, you're supporting them, you're trying to help them solve the problems that they're having. That is probably much more motivational than just throwing stuff at them because, that doesn't always, and most small business owners have probably seen this because most of them have tried those things and they haven't always worked. So I think you're right. It has to come from an internal motivation, and solving the problem probably makes a whole lot more sense than just bells and whistles and woohoo and cheerleading.
Man, are you right? It's funny. I study the same stuff you do on that topic, and you're right. It's when we look at sales assessments that people take, and we use several different companies, that we've tracked over the last 10 years. You're exactly right. This intrinsic motivation is becoming a bigger part of people's lives, especially with the millennials, and they'll be the biggest part of the marketplace coming in right now.
Yeah.
Right. And extrinsic, meaning the money and the awards and all that, is actually going down. So it's difficult.
I think they've proven time and time it doesn't do that much. So why do it? So great.
100%.
Excellent. Thanks. I think that was really helpful. One of the challenges I think that business owners have is tracking activities, really knowing there's a lot of doubt sometimes. Oh, my salespeople aren't doing anything, but they really aren't quite sure what's going on. How do what do you recommend to business owners and salespeople about tracking their activities?
That's a great question. And that's such a deep conversation, right? I mean, we talk about this CRM software or customer relationship management software, like, and there's a myriad of them out there, right? And should you use it or not? Well, the answer is yes. But a lot of people, we talked about this before the program, right? It's just a lot of people don't. They don't fill out the information as you put it. And I said, yeah, they don't fill out the information. So bad information in, that means bad information out. So yes, we have a statement in our training. We call it, look, if you're not tracking activities in some way, shape, or form, it's kind of like bowling through a curtain. And if you think about that, that wouldn't be a very fun game, right? You're like, what am I throwing the ball at? And I don't know what to aim at, and I don't know how many pins fell down to aim at next. So bowling through a curtain is an ugly game we wouldn't want to play. There's another statement out there that says never play the game you don't know the rules to. It's the same kind of concept. Like, if we don't understand the data of our profession, I don't know how you know what to wake up and do that day. Right. I mean, as we said earlier, some of us are better at live discussions and we'd be better to have more networking. And some of us are really good on the phones, and we should be either cold calling or calling people we know and making business happen that way. But we estimate, Dawn, there might be 25 ways to grow your business. We're not talking marketing. We're talking sales things you can do to grow your business. Wow. And quite frankly, yeah, I mean, it's a lot.
That is a lot.
Right. 25 ways, including things like, and it's not appropriate for everybody, but sometimes you have to do trade shows or expos. Sometimes, you need to do walk-ins into businesses. Those are obvious things, but a lot of people just don't understand the science behind what would be better for themselves to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And so what happens is they wing it.
Right.
Yeah. They sometimes do a little, they dabble over here, they dabble over there. They don't really have a system or a method to the madness. And then they wonder how come their sales aren't growing. And that's a challenge.
Absolutely. Without that data, you can't know where to make changes.
Correct.
You mentioned earlier, key performance indicators. They are exactly what they say they are, key performance indicators. And I'm sure many business owners can relate to this maybe in other operational parts of their business, but they may not really have dug into the sales piece because, again, they may not understand it all. But again, if you look into tracking the activities, some of those CRM systems, and really learn them, that'll sort of guide them too. I would think that there's a lot that sort of help in that. They're going to be set up for salespeople and help guide them. At least
it does. Yeah, it helped. You raise a really good point. A lot of sales, like owners will give that tool to their salespeople and say, good luck with it. Hope it works out. And, yeah, we're going to look at it every once in a while. Right. I always like to tell owners that are employing any type of statistic, don't just give it to them so that you can get the data. So, what, how to forecast your business. Of course you should use it that way. But we should really teach our people how to use the tool so that they get a lot out of it.
Right.
If it's just something that the manager demands, they're not going to want to fill it out. But if it's something that, boy, you ought to own this data and really understand where your business comes from, how it gets to you, then we've got somebody that doesn't want to not do it.
Right.
And even when you're not looking, they're doing it because it's helpful for them, because not only does it help them understand the science, but let's face it, stuff like those tools helps them not let things slip between the cracks.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great reminder. I ask clients sometimes, what are your follow-up systems? And they don't really have one. But with a system like that, then they do. You're right. Things don't fall through the cracks. And you're absolutely right about then staying on top of those numbers, reviewing them, helping. A million years ago, Kirk, I was in sales, and the first sales job I ever had, I had a wonderful manager, and every week we sat down and went over my numbers, and he was able to help me because he had the experience, identify my strong prospects and what I was doing well, where I needed to improve. That's what made me so successful. Had I not had that, if he had just said, go out there and wing it, do your thing, I'm pretty sure I would have failed dismally. But as a result of him really paying that close attention to me, I was stellar. I mean, it was just stellar opportunity for me, and just turned out great. So good. Thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of business owners will takes good information from that. So thanks for that.
Well, it sounds like the person you worked with had some good foresight even back then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Back when the dinosaurs roamed.
Right.
Oh, gosh. All right. Let's see. So how can you spot someone who you think might really be good in sales? I guess that would be whether it's in the interview process, or maybe you've worked with them for a little while and you've had salespeople, but they aren't really going anywhere. You've got them and you're not sure who to spend your time with and who's going to be good and who's not. So maybe it's both in the interview process and if they're on your team. I'll let you approach that however you think makes sense.
Yeah, that's another good question. I get that one a lot as well, because obviously if people want to hire, what am I looking for? Who are these people? How, the worst thing to do is to hire a salesperson for the position. And, 2 years later, you fire and hire again. And then 2 years later, you're doing it again. And you're just spinning your wheels and you've wasted 8 years. And next thing you know, you're right where you were.
Right.
Right. So yes, you have to pick these people. People sometimes don't like when I say this as well, but I'm a big believer in hiring slow and firing fast.
You're a man after my own heart. That's exactly what I tell my clients. Exactly what I tell them. Yes.
I mean, it's true, right? Because again, if you hang on to someone, isn't it funny how you finally let someone go, and then everyone around you, the workers and the people you work with, are all like, "What took you so long?"
Exactly.
Right? And it's like, wait, why am I the last one to find out that this person wasn't doing their job?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in sales, if we say it another way, if there's smoke, there's fire.
Mm-hmm.
If you have doubts about that person for a variety of reasons, you're probably right. And you probably should pull the trigger now. Trust your gut. You should not, the other is also true. If they're doing a good job, you'll know, they will be telling you, you'll see orders and activity going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how do you spot this person? Well, there's a lot of ways to be successful in sales. There's not one approach or one type of person.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that what we do see is there is one type of person that I seek for companies all the time. And this person looks like this. They are probably some form of a maverick, right? They may not be the nicest person or the person that has the most friends. It's not about that, right?
Right.
The maverick, what is a maverick? A maverick is somebody that, does the unpopular thing once in a while. Everybody's hanging out and they might leave first because they have more important things they need to accomplish.
Right.
Right. The maverick is the person that will have a little impatience. So you meet this person, they're not very patient. They're probably very direct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're going to say things maybe they shouldn't have said, but they just move along. Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I met this guy in an airplane once, perfect example. And here's this kid, he's probably in his 30s, and he's not really a kid, but he's in his 30s. I mean, back then, maybe he was a kid. Yeah, I'm dating myself, but he's sitting there on the airplane, and I happen to have a first class ticket because I got bumped up. Okay, which was we always love when that happens, right? So
Sure.
I'm bumped up. I'm in first class. Here's this guy with shorts and like a t-shirt on, and he's got flip-flops sitting on the ground, and his bare feet are up on the bulkhead, up on the on the airplane. And the flight attendant is walking by, and he's interrupting her and saying, "Hey, I need a drink." He's being a little bit rude. And I'm not saying rude is a good part of the equation, but I was thinking to myself, I bet you that guy would make a good salesperson because he's not taking no for an answer, and he's a maverick. He's pushing his way through. Does that make any sense when I talk like that?
Completely, because Yeah, I think that people who are afraid, want to make friends all the time, the really nice people, and this is the reason I got out of being a full-time salesperson, because I consider myself a really nice person. I hated to hear the word no. So I would beat around the bush and wouldn't always ask yes. So I was smart, or ask the question. So I was smart enough to know. Fortunately, I left at the top. I was still doing really good because it was a relationship kind of sales position. And I guess maybe that would have something to do with it too, on who you want. But I was smart enough to know that I didn't have the guts to continue to push and hear no all the time. So I think what you're talking about makes total sense. If you want to get a salesperson who is not afraid of the word no, that type of maverick, I completely agree with that. How would you put that though in a relationship? Let's say that it's my job to build relationships as a salesperson versus maybe that salesperson that sells, moves on, sells, moves on. Do you think that's a different personality? Or
it could be, but it could be the same. You're right. You have to have a level. That's another attribute. Clearly, you've got to have relationship skills. However, I like to say it this way. You brushed on a point we talk about in our training all the time. If your goal is on a sales call is to be friends, I'm not talking about with current clients. Like we know each other and we're friends, and we want to. That's okay.
Right.
But when you're trying to get business from someone, and if your goal is to be friends, I worry about what you're going to say and not say that you need to do.
Absolutely.
To get the sale. So what we go for, even with the Maverick, we still have to say, hey, look, a couple of rules. You're not allowed to offend the ego. Okay, so you got to be careful of that. But your goal, instead of being friends, we talk about this is to be friendly, of course, friendly, but to gain their respect and make them comfortable with you.
Yes.
Those are kind of the two things, like go for comfort and respect. And not offend them and all of those things. And I think now you've got something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense. Because again, you take someone that's too good at relationships, to your point earlier, they're afraid to hear no. And so they'll do everything they can to avoid it.
Look at me.
Right. They don't want to hear a no. So I'm not going to really ask that question.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I have seen that happen. So I suppose an owner can go and really, think through what is even with the people that they have, what kind of personality, and I know you do assessments for these things too, but if they even just think about what type of personality those people have, they may pretty quickly, maybe they don't fire them immediately, but they might go down that path, like you said, of some of those KPIs, some of that training, some of holding them accountable to some things, and then see what happens. And if they aren't able to kind of turn the tide, I forced myself to do cold calls, and I did okay at all of that stuff, but I realized it was painful for me.
Yeah.
And that a long-term career, when I said I would rather have a heart transplant, not even under anesthesia, than to pick up that phone because I was so terrified to do it, I knew that wasn't for me for the long run. So I guess thinking about, for owners to be able to think through the personality styles, if they're not getting the results they want, and seeing and really being honest about that, see if they can turn that around. They might really like the person, that sales rep, because they're nice and they're friendly and they're loyal, right? But if they're not going to get the job done, that really, and quite frankly, like I'll often say to my clients, you've got a square peg in a round hole. They probably really are unhappy, like I was. They're probably unhappy anyway, and you're doing them a favor by helping them realize this just isn't a good fit. So
they know it before you do.
Absolutely. So that's great. Wonderful. That's great information. I have another question about compensation for salespeople.
Sure.
What do you see maybe as the trend? Are there trends around this? Do you have certain kinds of industries where are there industries that pay people differently? Because again, I think that's another thing small business owners really struggle with, is how to pay their people. And it can be disastrous. So what
it can be disastrous. Yeah, matter of fact, we see companies setting up the wrong program, and then it's too late, and they find out the salesperson is making so much money. And that's great if they're doing a great job, but you don't want them to be paid a lot when they're not doing a great job.
Right.
And so, I look at it this way for the small business owners that are listening, look, it's an investment, but you have to protect yourself. You've got to protect yourself. You don't want to, in my opinion, lay out a huge amount of salary as an example, or give them too much rope so that, they can take advantage of you. There's so many business owners that we hear from that are so frustrated because they thought they had a good person on their team. And maybe they even started that way, but now they're not doing well. And the owner is paying them all this money and they're not happy. So what can you do to avoid that? Well, there's a few different ways you can go. I'm a big believer of not paying too much salary. I think you've got to, and again, it depends on the profession. You can't do this with all industries, obviously, but pay them more commission than you do salary. To me, that's got to be part. One of the trends right now is people are they are starting to put into place a declining salary structure with an increasing commission structure.
Got it.
Right. So you've got, every month your salary is going to drop, and every month your commission percentages are going to go up.
Right.
And I like that, because what that does is at some point, if the salesperson is not working out, they fire themselves.
Exactly.
Right. Because they're not making any money, and it's not you having to do it.
Right. That's great. That's a great suggestion. Is that something you work with your clients on when they come to you and say, I've got a problem, I want my salespeople coached, but I'm also not sure I have the pay structure quite right? Is that something you work with your clients on?
We do. Now, we don't dive into the weeds so much that we're setting up the program, right? Because, the thing that's hard is we'd have to know all the things that, we'd have to see their profit and loss statements. We'd have to look at their cost structure. There's a lot of unknowns that we would have to educate ourselves on, and we don't want to get too caught in the weeds. So but based on what they tell us, we could try to help them think the right way.
Right. So they might say, oh yeah, I'm paying my salespeople this huge salary. And you're going to say, okay, maybe we want to change a little bit about that. Like, without giving real exact percentages or those specifics, but you can give them a framework from which maybe would make more sense.
Precisely. Okay. And oftentimes they can take it from there, and they might even have a CFO that can put that into place. They just aren't familiar with different programs, and we make them aware.
That's great. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate the information that you've shared with us today. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you to ask you more questions, I know that you are not a pushy guy. You're very easy to talk to and happy to share information. If somebody wanted to talk to you a little bit more about what you do, what's the best way for them to do that? Is it to visit your website maybe, or?
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it, Dawn. It's long, but it's easy. It's literally the company's name. It's armstrongsalescoaching.com. And, yes, we have a Facebook page, a Twitter page. We've got, we have a YouTube channel, but if you go to the website, you can find all of that stuff, including the phone number.
Wonderful. That sounds great. Well, Kirk, thanks again for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I look forward to our continued relationship.
Well, thank you, Dawn. Likewise, me as well, and just appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.